I always thought the dark web was a myth, some kind of urban legend that tech enthusiasts used to scare the digitally illiterate. That was until my brother Michael disappeared. The police didn't care. A 25-year-old man ghosting his family for a few weeks wasn't exactly high on their priority list. He'll turn up, they said. Probably just needed some space. But I knew better. Michael and I spoke every day. We had dinner together every Sunday. He wouldn't just vanish without a word. We were all each other had after our parents died 3 years ago. The thought of him voluntarily disappearing was laughable. Something was wrong. I could feel it in that hollow space behind my ribs, where dread lives. After 3 weeks of silence, I broke into his apartment. Everything was as he'd left it. Dishes in the sink, half-empty coffee cup on the counter, laptop on the couch. The coffee had grown a thick layer of mold. His cat, Jinx, was only alive because the elderly neighbor had a spare key to feed her. I scooped up the trembling animal, whispering promises that we'd find Michael soon. Then I started to look into the laptop. That's where it all began. It took me days to crack his password. I'm not a hacker, just a desperate brother who tried every meaningful date, pet name, and inside joke until something clicked. When I finally got in, I found a folder labeled Atlas. Inside were dozens of links ending in onion, dark web addresses. My stomach dropped. What was Michael doing on the dark web? He was an IT consultant, not some cyber criminal. He fretted over speeding tickets and paid his taxes early. I Googled how to access these sites, downloaded Tor, and clicked the first link. It led me to a forum discussing things I can't even bring myself to type. I closed it immediately, bile rising in my throat. But as I sorted through the other links, one caught my eye. The auction house. The site was sleek, almost professional, a far cry from the chaotic forums I'd glimpsed earlier. It had categories, search filters, and a live chat. But it wasn't selling antiques or collectibles. It was selling people. Pages and pages of faces, tagged with descriptions like docile, strong build, no health issues. Each profile had a countdown timer and current bid. Some had sold already, marked with red, completed stamps, like items in a catalog. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through in horror until I saw him, Michael. His photo looked recent, but his eyes, God, his eyes were vacant. Purple bruises shadowed his left cheekbone. A small cut marred his lower lip. The Michael I knew, the one who laughed too loudly at bad jokes and cried at dog commercials, was gone. In his place was a hollow shell, staring blankly at the camera. The description read, male, 25, physically fit, technically skilled. Starting bid, 45 BTC. The auction was set to end in 48 hours. A counter showed 7 active bidders. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I thought they might crack. I ran to the bathroom and vomited until there was nothing left but bitter bile. Then I splashed cold water on my face and stared at my reflection. I had the same eyes as Michael, the same chin. Would I be next? I tried contacting the police again, but they dismissed me. The dark web is full of scams and fake listings, the officer said. It's probably just someone using your brother's photo. Then where is he? I demanded, my voice breaking. The officer sighed. Look, unless you have evidence of an actual crime, we can't do anything. But I knew it was real. The hollowness in Michael's eyes told me everything I needed to know. Whatever they'd done to him had already stripped away pieces of his soul. I created an account on the site and messaged the administrator begging for information. The response was chilling. Bidders only. Unless you're here to participate, leave. Final warning. A second message followed. IP logged, address noted. Then came my home address, accurate down to the apartment number. I spent the night researching everything I could about the dark web, Bitcoin, and how these auctions worked. My eyes burned, and my hands shook from too much caffeine and fear. By morning, I had a plan, a stupid, dangerous plan, but the only one I had. I would place a bid. It took everything I had, maxed out credit cards, emptied savings, a loan from my 401k, to convert enough money into Bitcoin. When I placed my bid, I felt sick, like I was participating in the very system I was trying to fight. But it was the only way to get closer to finding him. For 2 days, I barely slept or ate. Every time someone outbid me, my phone pinged with a notification, and I would immediately raise my offer. The final sum was astronomical, but I didn't care about the money. I just needed to win. When the auction ended, I received coordinates for a pickup location, an abandoned warehouse outside the city, and instructions to bring the payment on a specific type of encrypted drive. No phones, no weapons. Come alone, or the merchandise would be disposed of. The clinical language made my skin crawl. They weren't talking about a package, they were talking about my brother. I knew I was walking into a trap, but what choice did I have? I left Jinx with the neighbor and drove to the warehouse, rehearsing what I would say, how I would negotiate. Maybe I could reason with them. Maybe they were just in it for the money. The warehouse was exactly as you'd expect. Dark, damp, and reeking of decay. Broken windows let in slivers of moonlight that did little to illuminate the vast space. I clutched the payment drive in my sweaty palm as I approached the loading bay door. A man in a balaclava met me there. "Payment first," he said, extending his hand. His voice was distorted through some kind of modulator. "My brother first," I countered, trying to keep my voice steady despite the fear coursing through me. He laughed, the sound artificial and wrong through the voice changer. "That's not how this works." As we reached an impasse, I heard footsteps behind me. Before I could turn, something hard struck the back of my head, and everything went black. I woke up in darkness, my head throbbing with each heartbeat. When my eyes adjusted, I realized I was in a cage, a literal cage, like an animal. The metal floor was cold against my skin, and the bars were just wide enough that I couldn't quite squeeze through. And I wasn't alone. Other cages lined the walls, each containing a person. Some were crying, others sat in catatonic silence. The smell of unwashed bodies and human waste was overwhelming. "Michael," I called out, my voice breaking. "Michael, are you here?" A voice responded from somewhere in the darkness. "They moved him already. You're too late." "Who's there?" I asked, pressing my face against the bars to try to see. "Just another lot," the voice replied, flat and emotionless. "And now, so are you." The realization hit me like a truck. I wasn't just a failed rescuer. I was new inventory, fresh meat for their market. I screamed then, rattling the cage doors until my hands bled, but no one came. Over the next few days, people in masks came to photograph me, measure me, catalog me like a piece of furniture. They took blood samples, checked my teeth, tested my reflexes. They didn't speak to me, only about me, as if I couldn't understand their words. "This one's healthy, good skin, no visible scars. We can list him high. Family connection to lot 329. Might interest the same buyers." Spirited, some clients like that. I lost track of time in that cage. Days, maybe weeks passed. I marked time by the meals, if you could call them that, slid through the bars. Sometimes I would hear new people being brought in, their confusion and terror mirroring what mine had been. Sometimes people would disappear, never to return. Eventually, they brought in a laptop and forced me to record a video message. "Tell your friends you're on vacation," they instructed. "Make it believable, or we start removing fingers." They showed me a pair of bolt cutters to emphasize their point. I recorded the messages with tears streaming down my face, hoping someone would notice the fear in my eyes. But who would see? Who was even looking for me? After sending the messages, I overheard them talking. My auction was going live tomorrow. Starting bid, 60 BTC. They seemed pleased with my valuation. That night, as I lay on the cold floor of my cage, I heard a commotion outside. Shouting, then gunshots. For a brief, wild moment, hope flared in my chest. The door burst open, and flashlight beams cut through the darkness. For a moment, I thought I was being rescued. I was wrong. "Get the high-value lots out now," someone shouted. "Cops found the other location, they'll be here next." Rough hands dragged me from my cage and into a van with 3 others. 2 women and a man, all with the same dead-eyed stare I'd seen in Michael's photo. As the doors slammed shut, I caught a glimpse of the night sky, my last view of the world I knew. We drove for hours. I tried talking to the others, but they were too broken to respond. What had been done to them? What would be done to me? My mind conjured horrors that left me shaking. When the van finally stopped, we were led into another warehouse, identical to the first. New cages, new captors, same hell. They didn't bother with computers this time. A man in a suit pointed to each of us in turn, rattling off prices to someone on the phone. When he got to me, he paused. "This one's brother caused the raid. Make him an example." 2 men dragged me to another room. A camera was set up on a tripod. One of the men handed me a script. "Read it word for word, try anything, and we'll find what's left of your brother and mail him to your parents in pieces." I wanted to tell them my parents were dead, but the words stuck in my throat. With trembling hands, I read their warning to anyone else who might try to infiltrate their operation. I described in detail what would happen to them and their loved ones. As I spoke, hot tears ran down my face, but I didn't stop reading. I couldn't. When I finished, they returned me to my cage. That night, I dreamed of Michael. In my dream, we were children again, playing in our parents' backyard. I woke up crying, the ghost of his laughter echoing in my ears. The next day, my auction went live as planned. I could hear the man in the suit talking about spirited bidding and premium merchandise. They let me see the screen once, my own face staring back at me, with dead eyes just like Michael's. I've been sold 3 times since then, each owner worse than the last. I don't know where I am anymore. I don't know if Michael is alive. I don't know if anyone is looking for me. Jinx probably has a new home by now. My apartment has likely been rented to someone else. It's as if I never existed. But I know this. If you're reading my story, if you found it buried in the dark corners of the web where they make us post these cautionary tales, don't try to save us. You'll only end up here too. The dark web isn't a myth. The auctions are real. And once you're in the system, you never get out. Sometimes at night, I still dream of that moment when I first saw Michael's listing. I dream that I closed the laptop, called the FBI, and never placed that bid. I dream of a world where curiosity doesn't kill more than cats. But then I wake up in my cage, and I remember, there's no escape from the auction house. No one comes back from being sold. No one gets saved. And the worst part? Sometimes, in the deepest part of the night, when hope seems like a cruel joke, I find myself wishing someone would just place the final bid and end this nightmare once and for all.